Hi everybody, welcome back to the Grape Explorer. Hope you're all well. Today we're going to be talking about a white wine grape called Viognier. Now before I get into some of the detail about this particular grape, I'm curious to know, do you ever remember the first time you might have had a glass of a specific wine? The reason I say that is I remember Viognier really well. It was about 6 years ago. I was out for dinner at an Italian style restaurant. And it wasn't the fact that the meal was particularly special or the occasion was particularly special. I remember the glass of wine that I had because when the waiter came to take my drinks order, I asked for a glass of Viognier. I have, of course, since that time learned how to say these things properly, although I do often get criticised on this channel for not getting everything quite right, but hey, no one's perfect. So yes, today we're talking about Viognier, and I've actually already opened my bottle of Viognier. I've been enjoying this one for the last couple of days. So before I get on to a little bit more about this specific bottle, I just want to take you through a little bit more about the grape itself, where it's found, some of the growing conditions that are needed for it and some of the winemaking practices that take place. So let's get started off first by where in the world will you find Viognier? Viognier is very much a global grape. Traditionally found in France in the Rhône Valley and Languedoc-Roussillon. It's also very popularly grown in the United States, where California has most of the plantings, and it's also very popular in Australia, mostly in the southern parts of Australia. But that's not to say that there aren't other plantings around the world elsewhere, and you'll actually be able to find it in places like Chile, Argentina and New Zealand. So it is popularly grown around the world, although it does require certain conditions in order for it to be able to thrive and produce some really good fruit. Viognier in the vineyard needs a relatively warm climate. It's pretty hardy, it is able to withstand drought, and it produces grapes that are deep yellow in colour. Although it has to be said that certain vines can be prone to a powdery mildew, and that's just one of the typical hazards that you find in the vineyard, so extra care needs to be taken to ensure it has the right conditions and it's being looked after appropriately during the vineyard cycle. So once the harvest is over and those berries have been picked, what are winemakers doing with Viognier in their wineries? So Viognier in the wineries can be used as a single varietal, although also very popular in blends, which I'll come on to in a moment. The wines themselves can be high in colour, the alcohol levels can be particularly high, and the wines can be fermented in stainless steel or barrels, which mean you can have some primary aromas as well as lots of secondary aromas as well, where there's been some barrel aging. And as I say, it is particularly popular when used in blending. So in a region like the Northern Rhône and somewhere like Côte-Rôtie, it is commonly blended with Syrah. When blended with Syrah, you are allowed to use up to 20% Viognier in that blend. That's what's permissible in the Northern Rhône. It also blends very well with other Rhône varieties such as Marsanne, Roussanne and Grenache Blanc. It is also on occasion blended with Chardonnay, and I think when you get outside of some of the more stringent rules around places like the Northern Rhône, where there are certain percentages permitted, and you get into places like the Languedoc where they're a little bit more flexible on what can be grown, how it can be blended, that's where you'll start to see some more of those Marsanne, Roussanne, Chardonnay type blends. So what about Viognier from a aroma and flavour characteristics? Well, it really does depend on the type of climate that Viognier is being grown in. And let's start off with cooler climate type Viogniers. In a cooler climate, you may get aromas of things like tangerine and lime. You may get floral aromas, as well as aromas of apricot. And then when you move into a warmer climate, you're starting to get things like mango. That's a very bad example of a mango. You will also get things like pineapple and roses. And where there has been some of that barrel aging, you'll also get flavours like vanilla. That's also a very badly drawn vanilla. In my glass today is a Viognier from Chile, single varietal. This is from the Vina Connoisseur winery. It's called Bicicleta. Which is a tribute to the employees of this particular vineyard who get around on their bicycles. This is from the 2019 vintage for Chile, so just over a year old. Those grapes would have been harvested last year around springtime. for us here in the Northern Hemisphere. And what I've got in the glass here today is something that immediately struck me as high alcohol, immediately struck me as full-bodied. It's very rich on the palate. Things that I get from an aroma perspective are classic peaches, pineapples for me, were the two overriding aromas that came through. But it has such a huge coating sensation in the mouth, really rich. Acidity on this one is quite low, I'd say probably medium minus, but it's full-bodied. It's got a really good length about it, but that alcohol is high. I actually did check this and it was 14% alcohol, which is quite high, I think you'll agree. But overall, Viognier for me is something really enjoyable. I don't think it's a wine that I ever really have on its own. It's something that I typically have with food, and I think that's because it's so rich, so full-bodied. But definitely something worth enjoying. You know, they do make some fantastic Viogniers around the world, and this is just another example of another wine that I really enjoy. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of my Viognier, and I'd love to hear from you if Viognier is something that you enjoy, you've got some recommendations, as well as some other great varietals you might like to see on the A to Z of wine. For now, I'm going to say cheers, all the best. I hope you're all safe and well, and I'll see you all again soon. Cheers.